Hi, this is David Hine of Aspect Art. Today we're in the Flam Cultural Center for a show called The Bones of Color. With us today is one of the painters and organizers of the show, Jan de Beus. He's going to tell us how these Dutch and Flemish painters are related and a little about the show itself. So join us now at the Flam's Cultural Center for The Bones of Color. Eric, you're one of the organizers of this show. Could you tell us a little about how you organize it and what we have here?
It's an exhibition called Het Merg van de Kleur. Something about the bones of painting in a way, of color. And it's an exhibition of 3 generations of Dutch and Flemish painters, which is organized by Piet Moerman and myself. But the original idea came from Piet Moerman, to make an exhibition about what I say about painting. So he made the choice from the Flemish painters, and I made the choice for the Dutch painters.
Now, as I look around, I see that they're all what I would describe as painterly in their way. What else unites this group of people?
Partly they're people who know each other in the sense that, for instance, there are some relations between pupils and their teachers. For instance, Marie-José Robben, who was once a pupil of Lataster and of Sierhuis, for instance. Other relations are, of course, friendships. I mean, for instance, Piet Moerman, Rick Vermeers and I, we know each other from '84. I know Erik Oldenhoff since the beginning of the 80s. He became to know also some of the Belgian painters. There's a relation between Ravel and Piet Moerman. So in that sense, there are also that kind of relations.
Now, I notice there's a lot of color here and a lot of paint on these canvases. What would you describe the type of art as?
Now, it's about painting. I see it as a kind of painterly poem, this whole exhibition. But if you have to put a label on it, then it's a bit maybe in the direction of the neo-expressionistic movement. Although, for instance, the works of Bart van de Vijver, they're more a kind of fundamental painting. But I think if you can say one thing about this exhibition, despite how diverse the paintings or the painters, the artists are, that it shows some kind of love for painting at itself. That so in a way you can say this exhibition as a kind of subtitle, you could call it In Defense of Painting.
Well, speaking of defensive painting, we've moved into the new millennium, and how would you describe the state of painting here as we began the 21st century?
Yeah, I think painting is not that. I mean, it survives so many other movements, as for instance, one of the writers in the catalog text also writes, Hans Cizot, about, in a way, the so-called more revolutionary arts, like land art and so on. But it was such a short period of time, and in this case we talk about, let's say, 20th century painting, in the sense that everything is possible, with a lot of isms who are connected in one image. Yeah, and I think that this whole movement, in a way, of freedom of expression, that will continue the next century as well. I think that there's, on this moment, no limit to it, or an end.
The freedom of expression is one idea. Of course, painting in the 19th century and even in the 20th century sought to change people's minds, sought to stir up political or religious feelings. What do you think painting is really doing right now for the individuals?
Now, I think that in this case, it's an exhibition about paintings, and also I think partly the people I know, that they see it more poetical in the way that you start with painting. I mean, as an organizer, I can tell you that in comparison with other exhibitions about painting, then I've got the impression that there was first a very large intellectual scheme, and then the artists and the paintings had to be sought out to illustrate that. And in this case, it's totally the other way around, that the exhibition is organized with a starting point, some paintings which we admire very much.
Now, most of these painters are, in one way or another, established painters. Would you agree with that?
Not all, because there are also some very, I mean, for instance, the Brabander here in the Netherlands, he's totally unknown. I mean, almost unknown. So in that case, we have some very famous painters here, like Lataster, Ravel, for instance. But what I say, there are also much less known painters here.
As neo-expressionists, or some such title that we might give them, what exactly does that mean?
Yeah, I think neo-expressionism is a term of the art historians, or more the art critics, art dealers from the beginning of the 80s, the new wild ones. But on the other hand, the paintings from Evert Lundqvist, a Swedish painter, they were called in the 50s already neo-expressionist. So it's a phrase which doesn't mean anything, I would say. This is more timeless, I think, this whole exhibition. It's not dated in the sense that...
Much of painting today is about a commercial aspect. Is that painter selling? Is he being showed at the State League, let's say, for example, or one of the big museums? Is that a definition of painting by the public? Does the public dictate still through its financial support of a certain painter what painting is? Or is it the painters painting for themselves or each other?
Now, I think this is an exhibition for painters themselves and for each other. And what the public thinks about it, what we will see. I mean, people come here, but I mean, everybody has his individual career, of course, and for most of the painters who hang here, they are in their own circle, but because we talk about circles, of course, very well established, and some more, some less, but this is a painterly exhibition in a way, not so much regarding to look at what the public, because I think that the public in this this beginning of the new century, is more, maybe more interested in video art and things like that, you know. This, you can call it a very old-fashioned exhibition in a way, but it's a choice.
It's hard to hang a video on your wall at home. And some people think that some of the art today is hard to hang on your wall. What is a painter today seeking when he's in creating these things?
I think that a painter is, it's not only painting. I think that every artist is living a life in a way like a Robinson Crusoe way, that you have to find your own way in things you make. It's kind of a lifestyle where you choose from, and then you have, of course, very different styles to express yourself, whether it's literature or film or theater or whatever. But if you talk about painting, this is, although there are paintings which are very figurative in this show, that I still think that it's a kind of basically it's a kind of matter paintings, a kind of an exhibition about, that's also what the title is. Artists here are taking figurative images to express things. But in the beginning, in the sense, totally at the basis, I think it's concerning the paint itself, and then the possibilities, what you can do with it. And I think that that's very clear in this show also, to show the possibilities of paint, what you can do with it. This is the painting which I made for this exhibition. It's called Salome, inspired by the beautiful painting from Max Slevogt, which he painted probably in the first 10 years of this century. Painting which is regretfully destroyed in the Second World War. But this is one of a series of Salome paintings. I made also versions of the theme by Titian, Fabricius, Fauré. And it's a very recent one from 1999.
And what's going on in there?
Yeah, what we see is, of course, the very famous image, which is also described by Oscar Wilde, and of course coming from the biblical theme, later beautifully translated into music by Richard Strauss. But what we see here is, of course, the female Salome dancing with here her father Herod, and it's the scene just before the captivation of the head of John the Baptist. In the way the scene that she seduces her father to let him behead John the Baptist. And this is a very colorful painting, although the original from Sleefolk, much more tonal, is with only earth colors and a little bit of red and a little bit of blue.
There's a long history of relationship between Dutch painters and Flemish painters. I mean, it's how does this tie in? Do you influence one another?
Now, the thing is that what I told already, that Piet Moerman and Rick Vermeers and we know each other from the beginning of the 80s, and that's in a way that goes back to a gallery in Ghent, where a lot of young painters at that moment exposed, also Philippe Boutens, Ingrid Kastelein, all kind of other people, and that was in that sense a very fashionable gallery at that time, in the sense that there were examples of the new movement were shown there at that time. Then the neo-expressionism, what we talked about, yeah. And if you see a painting now from Piet Moerman, which is now totally different than his work from the beginning of the 80s, but if we talk about that older work of him, that was very figurative in style of, related to people like Rainer Fetting, for instance. And but you see that it's all very much developed. If there are some painters here at that exhibition, this exhibition, which were in the beginning of the 80s more interested in the image than in paint itself, then you can see within those nearly 20 years that it developed, that the image is at the end from a less importance than the way of handling with the paint itself. So in a way, it's a kind of heritage of a painter like Monticelli, for instance. I mean, you can make all kind of lines. If this is work which is going back to Monticelli at the end of the 19th century, also the Fin du siècle, the same period which we talk about now. Yeah, God, that goes back to Watteau, Fragonard, the Fête Galante. You can make all kind of lines.
Well, the Monticelli reminds me of these paintings on the end with so much paint and all of it put on very thick and but more figurative a bit. How long will this show be here? And where will it go from here?
It's in Amsterdam here in the Brakke Grond. It goes till the 13th of February. And then it will travel to Bergen, het kunstenaarscentrum. And that will be... there will be a bigger show. This is the first show in a series of 4, and each show will enlarge the number of paintings, because here we chose from everybody 1 or maybe 2 or 3 paintings. In Bergen it will be a 2 locations. Starting point will be the kunstenaarscentrum, but there will be from everybody 3 or 4 paintings everywhere. I mean, at the second location, and afterwards it will go to Roermond Stedelijk Museum. That will be this year, I think April to June, and then it will end up in the Museum for Deins en Leijstreek in Belgium, nearby Ghent, and that will be an exhibition with, from some painters, maybe even 10 paintings there. So it will be larger and larger and larger. It will grow, traveling through the Netherlands and Belgium.
Eric, thank you very much for being with us today.
Thank you.